The morning light slipped gently through the thin cotton curtains, painting soft golden lines on the pale walls of Lena's small bedroom. Outside, the world was already awake, faint noises of traffic in the distance, the rhythmic calls of morning birds perched on the old jacaranda tree by the gate, and the subtle hum of life that always seemed to move whether she was ready for it or not. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling. There was nothing remarkable about this morning, at least, nothing anyone else would notice. But for Lena, there was an invisible weight pressing gently but persistently on her chest, a familiar feeling she had carried for years. It wasn't sadness exactly, nor was it fear. It was something in between, the quiet discomfort of living a life that never truly felt like her own. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She didn't have to check to know it was her mother. The messages always came early, always filled with suggestions, reminders, and well-meaning nudges. Don't forget the application deadline. Your cousin Maria says the company still has an opening. Think about your future, Lena. You can't afford to waste time. It wasn't that Lena didn't care about her future. She did, deeply. But the future her family talked about was never the one she dreamed of. Their words painted pictures of offices and polished shoes, of stable salaries and predictable routines. Safe, respectable, and, to Lena, suffocating. Still, she got up. She always did. The patterned tiles beneath her feet were cool, almost startling against her skin. She moved quietly to the kitchen, putting the kettle on for tea. The familiar hiss of heating water and the scent of black tea leaves felt like a small comfort in a life that often didn't feel hers. As she waited, her eyes drifted to the small corkboard on the kitchen wall. It was cluttered with sticky notes, receipts, and to-do lists, all in her mother's neat handwriting. But tucked in the corner was something different, a small photo she had pinned there months ago, almost as a secret. It was a picture from a trip she had taken alone years back, before life became a steady march of obligations. In it, she stood on a windswept cliff by the sea, her hair tangled by the salt air, her smile wide and unrestrained. She had taken that trip without asking anyone's opinion, without seeking permission. It was the last time she could remember feeling fully herself. The kettle whistled, pulling her back. She poured the water into her mug and sat by the small kitchen table, the steam rising in lazy spirals. Outside, a pair of children ran past the gate, laughing freely, their footsteps quick and light. Lena watched them until they disappeared around the corner. Something about the way they moved, unthinking, unafraid, stirred something inside her, a memory of the way she used to feel before she started measuring every decision against other people's expectations. She had once loved drawing, not just as a hobby, but as a language, a way of understanding the world. As a child, she would fill entire notebooks with sketches, capturing the shapes of trees, the curl of waves, the expressions on strangers' faces. But she hadn't drawn in years. Her sketchbooks now sat in a box under her bed, untouched, gathering dust. It wasn't that she had decided to stop. She just never found the time. Or rather, she never allowed herself the time. Life had slowly rearranged itself around responsibilities. The practical choices her parents approved of, the jobs that paid the bills, the goals that sounded respectable when mentioned in conversation. The tea cooled in her hands. She took a sip, letting the bitterness settle on her tongue. Her phone buzzed again, this time a call. She considered ignoring it, but the sound echoed in the quiet kitchen. She answered. Lena, have you thought about Maria's suggestion? Her mother's voice came, brisk but warm. They're hiring. Good benefits, stable hours. This could be the start of something secure. Lena closed her eyes briefly. She had heard these words so many times they felt like lines from a script. I'll think about it, she said softly. That's good. You can't drift forever, you know. You need a proper path. The word path lingered in Lena's mind long after the call ended. Her mother didn't mean harm. She believed she was guiding her daughter toward safety, toward a life without struggle. But somewhere deep inside, Lena felt the quiet rebellion of a truth she couldn't shake. A path someone else chooses for you is not truly your own. The day unfolded as so many others had. She went to work, a temporary position at an office that dealt with endless rows of data. She answered emails, organized files, and made polite conversation with colleagues she barely knew. The hours passed in a blur of fluorescent lighting and the soft tapping of keyboards. Yet in the background, the thought kept pressing against her. If I keep walking this road, where will I end up? And will it be somewhere I ever wanted to go? On her lunch break, Lena wandered outside to a small park across the street. She sat on a bench beneath a tree, unwrapping her sandwich. The air was warm, carrying the faint scent of grass and distant street food. Around her, people moved with purpose, businesspeople talking into phones, parents guiding children, cyclists weaving between pedestrians. And then she noticed him, an old man sitting at the far end of the park, sketching in a notebook. His movements were slow and deliberate, his pencil tracing lines with quiet focus. There was something peaceful about him, as if the rest of the world didn't demand his attention in the same way it did hers. She found herself watching him, wondering what he was drawing. He looked up, catching her gaze, and smiled. Not the polite smile of strangers, but something warmer, almost knowing. He held up his sketchbook for her to see, even from a distance. It was a drawing of the very bench she sat on, complete with the tree's shadow falling across her shoulder. Lena felt a flicker of something deep inside, a spark she hadn't felt in years. For a brief moment, she imagined herself walking over, asking about his drawings, telling him she used to sketch too. She imagined holding a pencil again, letting her hand move freely across the page. But the thought was quickly replaced by the quiet voice she had learned to obey. You don't have time for that. You have responsibilities. She looked away. Still, the image of the old man sketching stayed with her for the rest of the day, like an echo she couldn't quite silence. When she returned home that evening, she didn't switch on the TV as usual. Instead, she found herself kneeling by the bed, pulling out the old box that had sat untouched for so long. The cardboard lid was worn at the corners, and a thin layer of dust coated the top. She hesitated for a moment, then lifted it. Inside, the sketchbooks lay stacked in uneven piles, their covers bent and pages yellowing at the edges. She opened one at random. There it was, her handwriting on the first page, from years ago, for the days I want to remember who I am. Her breath caught. Slowly, she turned the pages, seeing her younger self in every line, every shape, every imperfect but earnest attempt to capture the world. She didn't pick up a pencil that night. But she left the box on the table instead of sliding it back under the bed. And as she lay in bed later, listening to the distant hum of the city, she felt a quiet shift. Small, almost imperceptible, but real. The next morning arrived quietly, as if the world had pressed the snooze button. A pale mist hung low over the street outside Lena's apartment, softening the outlines of buildings and blurring the edges of the day. She sat at the kitchen table again, a mug of tea warming her hands, the box of sketchbooks still sitting nearby, a silent reminder of the night before. She hadn't opened it again yet, but its presence was enough to shift the air in the room. It was strange how something so ordinary, just paper and pencil marks, could hold so much of a person's truth. Her phone vibrated, another message from her mother. This time, Lena didn't open it right away. She turned the phone face down on the table, letting the moment breathe. She glanced out the window. Across the street, a delivery truck was parked, the driver unloading crates. A cat darted across the road, narrowly avoiding a cyclist. The day was waking up, each piece falling into place in its usual rhythm. And yet, Lena felt as though she was standing at the edge of something, not quite a decision, but the quiet awareness that one might be coming. Her thoughts drifted back to the old man in the park. She could still see him there, bent over his sketchbook, utterly unhurried, as if the world's demands simply didn't apply to him. It wasn't just the act of drawing that had stayed with her, it was the way he seemed to belong entirely to the moment, without apology. On an impulse, she decided to take her lunch in the park again. The hours in the office passed with their usual quiet monotony, the glow of the computer screen, the click of the mouse, the measured politeness of coworkers asking about deadlines. But beneath the surface, her mind kept replaying the scene she had witnessed, pencil to paper, the gentle curve of a line, the patient shading. By the time her lunch break arrived, the mist had burned away, leaving a crisp, blue sky overhead. She crossed the street to the park, her steps quickening slightly without her meaning them to. The bench where she had sat yesterday was empty, but at the far end of the park, she saw him again, the old man, in the same spot, sketchbook open. Today, the sunlight caught on his silver hair, and the breeze ruffled the edges of his paper. She hesitated for a moment, then walked toward him. "Hello," she said softly. He looked up, eyes bright and warm. "Ah, the girl from the bench," he said with a small smile. "Back for another lunch under the tree?" Lena returned the smile, a little shyly. "Something like that. I noticed your drawing yesterday. It was beautiful." He chuckled, the sound low and pleasant. "Beautiful, I don't know about that. But it was honest. And that's all I ever aimed for." She glanced at his sketchbook, curiosity tugging at her. "Do you draw here every day?" "Most days," he said, turning the page to reveal a fresh sheet. "The park is a good place for truth. People don't hide themselves as much here. Children run without thinking. Couples talk without measuring their words. Old friends sit in comfortable silence. It's all worth capturing." Lena felt something stir in her chest, recognition. He looked at her thoughtfully. "Do you draw?" She hesitated. "I used to. A long time ago." "Why did you stop?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The reasons were easy to list. Work, obligations, lack of time, but they all felt thin compared to the deeper truth. She had stopped because it didn't seem to fit into the life others wanted for her. "I'm not sure," she said finally. He nodded as if he understood more than her words revealed. "The world will always give you reasons to stop doing what matters to you. But those reasons, they're rarely as solid as they seem." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of the park filled the space between them. The rustle of leaves overhead, the distant laughter of children, the faint squeak of a swing. Then, without another word, he pulled a small pencil from his pocket and handed it to her. "Here," he said simply. "Draw something." The pencil felt strange in her hand, both foreign and familiar. She glanced at him, half expecting him to take it back or insist he was joking. But he just watched her with quiet patience. She opened her bag and found a folded receipt. It wasn't a sketchbook, but it was paper, and for some reason, that was enough. She began to draw. Just a quick outline of the tree in front of them, the way its branches curved toward the sky. Her hand was unsteady at first, the lines hesitant, but soon, something loosened. The pencil moved more freely, following instincts she had almost forgotten. When she finished, she looked down at the simple sketch. It wasn't perfect. The proportions were off, and the shading was rushed. But it was hers. The old man leaned over to see. He smiled. "You see, it's still there. It never really leaves." Lena felt an unexpected heat behind her eyes. She looked away, blinking. "It's just a tree. It's more than that," he said gently. "It's proof." She wanted to ask. Proof of what? But the answer was already there in her chest. Proof that the part of her she thought was gone was only sleeping. They spoke a little more, about nothing and everything, before she had to return to work. As she stood to leave, he said, "Bring your own paper next time. And come back." The rest of the day at the office felt different. The fluorescent lights didn't seem as harsh, the minutes didn't crawl quite as slowly. The receipt with her quick sketch stayed tucked in her pocket, a small secret she kept touching as if to remind herself it was real. That evening, she didn't go straight home. Instead, she stopped by a small art supply store she hadn't visited in years. The smell of paper and wood shavings greeted her as she stepped inside. She wandered the aisles slowly, running her fingers along the spines of sketchbooks, the smooth barrels of pencils, the neatly arranged rows of paints. She bought a small sketchpad and a set of pencils, nothing fancy, just enough to start. As she walked home, the bag felt strangely heavy for its size, as if it carried more than paper and graphite. At home, she placed the new supplies on the table next to the old box of sketchbooks. Two worlds side by side, the past she had abandoned and the future she wasn't sure she was ready to claim. She didn't draw that night either. But she sat for a long time, looking at the pencils, feeling the quiet possibility in them. And somewhere deep inside, a thought whispered, not loud, not demanding, but steady, maybe it's time to start walking my own path.